Today at YCM, we feel extremely lucky and grateful to Chitra Narayan ma'am for taking out her valuable time from her busy schedule to nurture young minds like us and to share her valuable inputs and experience in the area of dispute resolution. We know these are tough times, and we hope that this interview will bring positivity in your life and will help you understand better about dispute resolutions and mediation. The theme of this interview is dispute resolution skills are life skills, and hey, you can resolve it. Chitra ma'am is a lawyer and an accredited mediator with the Tamil Nadu Mediation and Conciliation Center annexed to the Madras High Court since its inception in 2005. She is co-founder of Foundation for Comprehensive Dispute Resolution, FCDR, an organization providing mediation training and mediation services in Chennai. As a lawyer, Chitra ma'am has over 20 years of experience in corporate commercial laws, both in transaction advisory and dispute resolution, which she brings to support her work in mediation and conciliation. Chitra ma'am has also trained judges and lawyers about mediation. She was also invited as speaker at conference and seminars on mediation, including at the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Center for Advanced Mediation Practice, CAMP, LitCon 2017 conference on IP litigation. She also organized and spoke at FCDR Madras Management Association conference on appropriate dispute resolution in Chennai. Chitra ma'am has been a partner with leading law firms prior to setting up her independent practice. She was a partner with J. Sagar Associates, and before that, a founding partner with Vichar Partners, a Chennai-based law firm. She is a graduate of the National Law School of India University, Bangalore, and has a master's in law in development from the University of Warwick, United Kingdom, which she attended as a Shivning Scholar. Chitra ma'am is a specialist editor of the 18th edition of A. Ramaiah Guide to the Companies Act 2015, C.R. Datta on the Company Law 7th edition 2016, and Pollock and Mullah, the Indian Contract and Specific Relief Act 2017. After looking at her works in the legal industries, we can understand how experienced she is. And today we have got the golden opportunity to grasp her knowledge and wisdom through this session. Thank you so much, ma'am, for joining with us and giving us your valuable time. We are truly indebted.
It's my pleasure, Aditya. Thank you for having me.
So starting with the conversation, my first question for you is, like we have seen that you have across 15 years of experience, vast experience. So what were the biggest challenges and learning in dispute resolution and specifically mediation?
I was lucky to have had an early opportunity to get trained in mediation thanks to Mr. Sriram Panchu, senior advocate and senior mediator. And this was in 2003, I think, yeah. And to me, as a lawyer, I had felt that there were issues in the courts. There were delays. I thought there was a lack of agency that parties had when they had disputes and took it to court. I would see judges sitting with scores of cases each day, trying to give it their the individualized attention that they needed. And when I got trained in mediation, to me it seemed like such a wonderful opportunity for parties to giving them an option of trying to resolve the cases themselves, that this is their problem and they could resolve it on their own, and that there were laws and that there was a system being instituted that would support resolution by parties themselves. So, to me, mediation was a very empowering process, and it landed in my heart. I mean, I was overjoyed when I got trained in mediation. Over time, I've sort of laid greater, set a lot more stake in mediation being able to resolve disputes, because the values it brings to dispute resolution. The challenges I see are some are personal and some are sort of systemic. The first is that mediation has not been able to sort of grow to the extent one would have liked it to. But I mean, I think we should also acknowledge the fact that courts have been around for so long, and they have helped litigants. They have helped in articulating rights, in establishing rights. They've helped in resolving disputes for so long that I think, yes, to think that a move away from courts and to mediation will happen so soon, I think that's a bit of wishful thinking. But having said that, I think there is still a certain linearity about how people look at the way of resolving disputes. And that's a big challenge, I think, that we need to sort of overcome. On the personal front, challenges in mediation are a lot of questions about, what is fairness, what is justice? And when you're mediating a case, how important is your perception of this fairness and justice? What does it mean to be a neutral? Can you be neutral? You are a political person. And you're also trained in a particular discipline. What happens when these thoughts sort of play in your mind? How mindful are you about this when you mediate? How mindful are you of imbalances? And what does neutrality mean when you're sitting in a process and assisting parties to resolve their disputes? So these are questions, these are challenges. I'm also grateful for mediation for sort of opening my mind to the very huge diversity of processes for resolving disputes that are there in the world and in our country. I'm less judgmental of them. I've stopped thinking of the court as being the place for resolving disputes. I've stopped seeing them as lesser means of resolving disputes. So these are sort of the changes it has brought to my life.
Strong people are shaped by strong experiences, and ma'am, you truly justify this statement. Now, moving forward, now that India is witnessing the second wave and the courts have started virtually again, in your view, what does our country need for an effective online dispute resolution system, that is ODR? And is the online mode adopted by courts working well? And what are the practical challenges faced by the advocates and the judges?
Okay. When I respond, and I think I need to sort of qualify this response. I stopped going to court about 5 years ago, so I'm not going to claim to speak to know what's happening in the court and in ODRs in the court. But I will speak about the use of online dispute resolution platforms and for mediation. I'll also qualify what I want to say as an urban person from a city speaking, right? Because I think the experiences of online dispute resolution are very different across the country. And I think that needs to be made clear. Before last year, I have used online platforms in mediation, but very sparingly, very occasionally. And I found that it took a lot of energy and a lot of effort to be able to mediate disputes online. But since using it more frequently over the last year and this year, I think a lot of misgivings I had about using the online platform for mediation, a lot of it has gone away. We are able to use online platforms very effectively to resolve disputes. I mean, there are obvious advantages that I think all of us know. The fact that it brings different geographies together, the fact that it's such a boon during these times when we are not able to meet and interact physically. The courts have, as a way of bringing online dispute resolution for mediation, have given us trainings, have set up standard operating procedures, have reinforced certain value systems that mediation finds important in the online mediation about what confidentiality means, what our responsibilities are as mediators when we mediate online. And these have helped us, conduct mediations online. But I think there are sort of a lot of people who've made an effort to take the online medium further afield. I mean, you have work done by groups like Sama, who have conducted Lok Adalats online. And I had the opportunity of listening to persons from Sama talk about how this went, how they went about doing this. And there was a lot of work that they did before the mediations were actually conducted online. The Lok Adalats were conducted online. The kind of training, the kind of sensitization, the kind of sort of working together that, they worked on with the different stakeholders. It was a lot of effort. There was a lot of sensitivity to how this was done. And I think they brought together a mammoth effort with mammoth results. So there is a lot going on, and I think it's wonderful. But I think online dispute resolution is also perched on, the offline structures that we have, the offline institutions that we have, and the offline sort of disparities that we have. So while online dispute resolution is a means and is a measure, I think we need to be very sort of measured and careful about it, and realize that it's not going to supplant or take over problems that we face in the offline world. There are disparities, there are underserved communities. I mean, it works well in the urban context, but in the rural context, I'm not sure. There are large swathes of our population who don't have access to the internet. And I think we should be mindful about, these limitations that the online dispute resolution processes have. We should also be mindful of the fact that there is a lot of sensitization needed in order to sort of mainstream mediation, so to speak. More cases need to be referred for mediation for us to also be able to use this online platform. Also about the stages when disputes are referred for mediation. If there is an interim order that is important, I think that interim order can only be given by the courts or by the arbitral tribunal. If there is a maintenance application, for instance, that is pending, that's, sorry, 1 minute. So that's something that you need to be mindful of before sending the case for mediation. So these are aspects that are sort of issues or problems in our offline world, and so these need to be tackled independently. The online measures will not take account or sort of resolve this.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for making us understand about the situation. Now, in one of your articles, I read that about 174 countries recognize mediation and conciliation as a method of resolving disputes. Now, where does India stand among those countries, and how well equipped is our system of resolving disputes through mediation?
So India is probably at the forefront because we have so many laws and regulations that provide for mediation and conciliation. Unfortunately, in India, we've gotten caught in sort of demarcating mediation into mediation and conciliation, and sort of what is expected in a conciliation under Part 3 of the Arbitration and Conciliation Act, making it a little inflexible. The different laws also, I mean, we have the Commercial Courts Act, we have the Arbitration Conciliation Act, we have the Civil Procedure Code, we have the Companies Act, we have the MSME Act. I mean, there are so many laws that the Industrial Disputes Act, so many laws that actually provide for mediation and conciliation as a part of the dispute resolution continuum, either saying, you have to mediate, or providing, the mechanism of mediation as a facilitation, right? So you have ombudspersons under Reserve Bank of India regulations, SEBI regulations, the insurance regulations, who also are expected to conduct mediations when they're resolving disputes. The thing is, we have far too many regulations. Each of these regulations sort of setting different standards, defining the processes very differently. So I think it's, I think we need to sort of streamline a lot of this. We also need to sort of look at mediation in a more wholesome way. We have, for instance, the Arbitration Conciliation Act that talks about arbitration and about conciliation. Section 30 of the Arbitration Conciliation Act says that the arbitrators will look at resolving the dispute through mediation, conciliation, etc. But you also have a provision in the Arbitration Act that says that once pleadings are complete, you will resolve the dispute within a year's time. So you will complete the arbitration within a year's time. Now, once you have a time limit set, this discourages parties from looking at conciliation or mediation once the arbitration has started. So I think you need to look at, you don't have, for instance, also provisions that exempt the time spent for mediation from the limitation, that's within which you need to file a case. So you need to look at mediation in a more wholesome way, not as sort of in silos in the way it's being done in most legislations now.
Thank you so much for giving an insight about a legal system concerning mediation, ma'am. Now, as you are working on policy and legislation for mediation in India, what is your opinion about the standalone law for mediation in India?
I think it's very important to have a standalone law on mediation. I think it's important first for us to sort of debunk this distinction in policy about mediation and conciliation. There are functional differences in the two in terms of the conciliator taking a more active role and the mediator taking a less active and a facilitative role. But these are processual elements, and I don't think the policy needs to make a distinction between mediation and conciliation. We are on two tracks already about mediation and conciliation in our different policies in India today. And I think that distinction needs to go. So I think we need to define mediation, the process of mediation in a standalone policy as at its very elemental level. We also need a standalone law in order to set standards for mediation, standards that sort of identify what the rights of the parties are in the mediation process. The fact that this is a voluntary process, the fact that there are obligations of confidentiality and standards that the parties and the mediator need to adhere to. The aspect of limitation that I spoke about earlier. What are the standards in the process that we would want to see? What is the status of a mediated settlement agreement? What is the oversight that the mediated settlement agreement and the mediation process needs to have? How does one enforce a mediated settlement agreement? Should one be able to challenge a mediated settlement agreement? And of course, the Singapore Convention, which I think requires a law to be made in order to implement the Singapore Convention once India ratifies it. So for all of these reasons, I think we need a standalone law which would set the standards and set the norms for the variety of legislations and regulations that we have in India concerning mediation.
Okay. And what do you think? Will there be a resistance from the legal fraternity towards mediation?
I don't like to see it as resistance or acceptance. I think we need to look a little behind how we are trained as lawyers and what we perceive our role to be as lawyers. We are, we are trained in colleges to look at the laws as very important, as the courts is very important, as the courts as the institutions that safeguard our rights, that resolve disputes for us. As lawyers, with our training, with our experience, and with our perspectives, we set a lot of store by this. This institution is important. The processes that this institution provides, the outcomes that this institution provides are very important to us. I mean, there's no two ways about it. So when clients come to us, we look at the law as providing standards and as providing remedies for our clients. And we look at the court process as the process by which we will resolve this dispute. When a client comes to us with problems, we as lawyers want to help them. Right? And we take on the problems and issues that the clients face as our very own. Our lawyers are very hardworking, right? So, they go all out to get the best for their clients, right? So, I think the issue of resistance is not an issue of money, but I think it's about understanding this process better. And I don't think lawyers are invested in the longevity of cases or being able to earn money through the longevity of cases. I don't think that's how lawyers function at all. I think, once mediation becomes mainstream, lawyers will work out mechanisms for the services and the assistance that they provide to clients. And let me say, it's very important, the presence of lawyers in mediation. So there will be mechanisms worked out for, remunerating lawyers for the work they put in mediation, for their support in the mediation process, their assistance to clients in the mediation process. So I think lawyers have started using mediations tactfully. When cases are filed in court, often the trigger is an interim relief that the client needs. And once lawyers have gone through this process of the interim application being filed, being heard, and orders being passed, and the appeals that these applications need to take. Once that is done, and once the main case is set for trial, is awaiting trial and final hearing, lawyers tactically use mediation. They take the case to, they bring the cases to mediation, and they try and resolve it. So lawyers are finding ways of using mediation that best serve their clients' interests. So I don't expect resistance in that sense from lawyers. In Italy, there was a law passed mandating mediation for certain categories of cases. Lawyers struck work and challenged this law. But when, this law was reconsidered and restructured in a more wholesome way, which mandated the, lawyers being there, lawyers participating in the mediation with the clients, lawyers assisting their clients and, advising their clients on how they would resolve their disputes through the mediation. The use of mediation has grown. So I think we are all stakeholders in this process. We as mediators, as lawyers, as parties. And I think we need all of us for mediation to succeed in our country.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for the answer. Now that you are also an author and have authored plenty of books and articles throughout your career. So my question is, what thought process goes behind writing a book, and how does your practice as a mediator helps you in that?
Okay, so the books you had referred to are not books I have written. I have edited them. I've revised these books, some with several people. The only book I have written is a book on mediation policy and practice. That's the name of the book, which came out in January 2021. And that looks at mediation in different dispute verticals, for instance, matrimonial disputes, insolvency disputes, um, the Singapore Convention, etc. What are the thought processes? I mean, it's very difficult to sort of identify thought processes in that way. I think as a mediator, I wanted to sort of spread the message of mediation further. And that was sort of the motivation for writing the book. There are countries where mediation has been used sort of more extensively in many dispute verticals, and I wanted to talk about the possibilities of mediation in each of these dispute categories, the challenges in each of these dispute categories, the issues that have come up very peripherally or not at all, and I wanted to sort of put that together. So that was the reason why I wrote this book on mediation. I have practiced as a corporate commercial lawyer. I have also practiced in matrimonial law very briefly at the start of my career. And having practiced these areas of law, that helped me sort of being able to look at the issues, look at what is happening in mediation in these dispute categories, and to write about it. There were areas that I have not practiced in, so labor disputes and community mediation. I had friends who have practiced in this area and who are mediators. They wrote chapters on these areas, so that's how my practice helped in writing.
Thank you, ma'am. And what are your thoughts on dispute resolution skills and life skills? Any experience from your journey so far that you would like to share with us on how dispute resolution skills, specifically mediation, personally benefited you?
I think mediation is a life skill. I think what we want parties to do in the mediation, which is to listen to the other side, to understand the other side, and work together in resolving the dispute. I mean, it's nothing but a life skill. The demands on the party are very, very tough in a mediation. If you were to take your dispute to arbitration or take it to court, there is someone else who's deciding it for you. But here you're asked to sort of confront, sit with the person with whom you have a conflict, which is a very difficult thing to do, usually, to talk to that person, to listen to that person, and to work with that person in resolving it, to look at it not as my problem or your problem, but as our problem, and to resolve it. So the demands that mediation makes of parties and of lawyers is tremendous. And that's been very humbling when you see parties sitting together, trusting you, and working together to resolve the dispute. It's a very humbling experience. It's also taught me that there are many, many sides to everything. It's not in silos. There is no sort of right and wrong. I mean, it's all, there are a lot of ambiguities and a lot of disputes. And so to give an example of how it has affected me, these skills as a mediator have helped me in my transactional work. I sort of assist parties in sort of developing investment agreements or shareholder agreements. And in one such instance, there was a lot of sort of back and forth about how the new company that would be set up would be managed. Each party brought to the new company a certain value. Some brought money and investments, some brought experience, some brought expertise, some brought technical expertise. And there's a lot of pull and push about what needed to be done, and everyone was exhausted, angry. each party had given a little bit, but had stood firm on something else, and everyone was angry, and the discussions and the negotiations just fell apart, and everyone went home. And each felt that they had given in quite a bit, and they were angry. And after I waited for a day or two, and I spoke to my client, and I told my client, I understand you're upset and I understand you're angry, but why don't you pick up the phone and speak to the other parties and ask if we can, begin this process again. Also reflect on why the other parties have asked for what they have asked for. And let's identify these interests or these concerns, which are the basis for certain claims in the agreement, and let us talk about it and see how we can resolve it. I was fortunate that the client actually heeded this and thought about it, spoke to me again. We spoke about why there were these sort of pulls and pushes. And then this person, who's a very senior person, actually called the other parties and spoke to them, and we got back on track. Right? And we were able to find a way of, putting something in the agreement that met everyone's concerns. Maybe in my pre-mediation avatar, I would not have thought of something like this. I would have been hesitant. Another example of mediation being a life skill is a mediation that I did where it related to an admiralty dispute. There were many people who had claims on a ship. The ship was sold, and there was money available to be distributed. It could have been distributed pro rata. It could have followed a certain priority. But over the course of the mediation, what came through was that there were small claims, there were large claims, and the people with the smaller claims were people for whom the small amount of money meant everything. It was important for them to recover this money. And there were larger companies for whom it was important to recover this money, but for whom, they could let go a little bit of this money. And as we all sat together and spoke of, how these, claims came about, how these debts had come about, what each person's needs were, these big companies actually said, we will forego some of our money so that the smaller claimants for whom the small, this amount of money is so important, get a little more, as a recovery or as a repayment. And it was amazing. And that's how it got resolved. So, I mean, this is something that can happen, I suppose, only in mediation, where you get to know each other so much more than you would if you were in an adversarial process. You don't think of only what the formal claim is. You go beyond that at the person, at the person's needs, at the person's interests. And you're willing to forego because you are able to, and you do it. And that was such a fine gesture. So yes, that's a life skill and a life value rather than a skill, actually, that I said.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing such an amazing experience. Now, do you think that the youth of this country should be equipped with skills like dispute resolution, negotiation, and conflict management skills?
I think our youth, I think all of us use these skills in our day-to-day. And I think it'll be presumptuous to say that these are skills to be learned only. I think we learn it through our lives. But in terms of the young people that I think we know sort of better, that is people who are studying the law, I think it's important for you not to look at adversity or the adversarial system as the only way in which disputes are resolved. and that there can be collaboration in resolving disputes, that there are multiple ways of resolving disputes, and that we must use all of them. That these are all parallel systems, parallel processes that go hand in hand with the courts. And that we don't look at dispute resolution as a straight line, that you go straight to court, you file a case in court and let the court decide. That has its place, but there is also place for different processes that are available. And I think that's something I'd urge law students and young lawyers to think about.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, what is your one message to all the aspiring young mediators and young dispute resolution lawyers out there?
What I have said just now, that expand your canvas and expand your sort of globe when you look at helping your client. Your responsibility as a lawyer is not just winning cases. I think it's also doing the best by your client. And giving clients options, sort of informing them about the multiple processes that are available when if disputes were to arise, both at the time when you're drafting agreements or contracts for parties, as well as when a dispute arises and one is looking at the way of resolving the dispute. So that is what I would urge young lawyers. And I think you don't have to be a mediator formally. You can be a mediator even as a lawyer. Each person, you have your own journey to take. Do take it. Do prioritize what it is you want to do, either in courts, in arbitration, in mediation, and in negotiation, and multiple other ways in which disputes can be resolved, and enjoy your journey.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for speaking with us today. We are absolutely grateful for the time and effort you took to share your thoughts and experiences with us. Your years of research, your depth of making us understand, and your ability to present the subject in such an interesting way produced one of the most memorable evening in YCM's history. And the subject intrigues all of us, and we plan to learn more after this conversation. Thank you so much, ma'am, and we are truly grateful to you for this interview.
Thank you so much to YCM as well for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Bye.
So